Hello and welcome to the second instalment of our Parents Forum online videos. I'm Mr. Corner, Deputy Head Teacher, and this video is going to be all around teaching, learning and feedback. As part of this video, I'm going to talk to you about the structure of our lessons here at the Deeping School. I want to talk to you about home learning and what that looks like and how students access it. As part of that, I'll talk to you about the knowledge organisers and the online learning applications that we have. There'll be a quick update on remote learning, and then I'll finish with how we here at school provide feedback to students and what that looks like and what we do with it. So all of our lessons here at school have the same structure. They all begin with some ready to learn time, and we make sure there's no lost time to any of our lessons. This will be a short activity revolving around the idea of retrieval practice. So trying to encourage students to think back to something they've learned in the past. That could have been last lesson, it could have been last week, last month, or even last term. It helps with that continual revisiting of topics and of key learning, key content to make sure it sticks in long-term memory. We'll then start with the lesson objectives and why we're learning whatever is taking place in that lesson on that day. We then hit three phases of direct instruction, or I do, meaning the teacher does, guided practice, we do as a class, or independent time, the you do, when the students work independently. These three phases to the lesson can take place in any order, and they can be as short and as long as the teacher likes. It might even be that we do some direct instruction followed by guided practice, followed by more direct instruction before moving to independent time. They're interchangeable, it's fluid, but they're really key aspects to every lesson. And at the end of the lesson, we'll always finish with an assessment of the learning that's taken place during the last 100 minutes, which first of all supports students in understanding what they've taken away from the lesson, but also supports the teacher and their planning and preparation for future lessons. For each of the three main phases of a lesson, the I do, the we do and the you do, we have certain expectations of the students. So during the direct instruction phase, the I do, that's mainly where the teacher will be explaining and going through key information, key content. Students should be silent and listening to the teacher at all times and doing any activities they're asked to. During the guided practice or the we do section, students should be ready to make notes, go through an example. They may need to answer or ask questions depending on what the teacher's doing at the time. And the independent time, the you do, where a certain part of this will always be done in silence. They should work independently, so on their own, or as part of a group as directed by the teacher. And as I said, at some point during the independent time, students will be asked to work in silence, so we get that peaceful, calm, really high quality period of independent time. Home learning is a vital part of the teaching and learning process at the school. It is really important that students complete all of their home learning that's been assigned and that they begin to become more independent at home. And when they haven't got specific tasks set, there are plenty of options, plenty of activities, plenty of resources that they can make use of to continue their learning at home. In terms of an order and a flow chart of what students must complete, they must always start with all of the quizzes or any assignments that have been put onto Teams. There may be other tasks as part of the posts that students will be directed to, but the main thing is complete those assignments. And they should always look to complete 2 periods of 20 minutes of reading each week, whatever the student fancies, but it's really important to that development and over the time long-term learning. If all of that's been completed, then students should use knowledge organisers. They should all know where they are, but I'll show you again shortly. It helps you to learn and remember all of the information, key facts and vocabulary you need for all of your subjects. There are also a selection of activities suggested in the knowledge organisers that students can use. Another alternative is to use the online learning resources available. Again, I'll show you those shortly, but for example, Hegarty Maths or Educake in Science. All of those online learning resources are available to students to test their knowledge, create revision resources, or just to further develop their knowledge further. A reminder that all home learning assignments are set within Microsoft Teams. So if students go into Microsoft Teams, on the left-hand side, they'll see the assignments button, and there'll be notifications there to tell students that they have assignments that need doing. They can go into each team, as you can see on the screen, and click on assignments at the top, and that will show you and the students which ones they need to complete, what they've done before, and what feedback they've had. Knowledge organisers are really important, and we've got a fantastic array of resources as part of ours. They're a collection of key information, facts, diagrams and vocabulary that students are required to know to be successful in their subjects. They can be used for pre-learning, supporting learning as students are going through a topic, but also revisiting learning in the future. All year groups can find their knowledge organisers on the student grid, and it looks a little bit like this. We have different ones for term 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and 5 and 6. The post-16 knowledge organisers are slightly different, and the sixth form will know where to find those. As part of the home learning flowchart, I talked about once set home learning assignments are completed, that students could work on their knowledge organisers. We've put together this handy timetable for students so that if they do need to work from their knowledge organisers and they're a little bit stuck on where to start, if they follow this timetable for which subject to do on a weekly basis, it will really help them. So for example, in Key Stage 3, if it's a Monday, they should focus the first 30 minutes on English and the second 30 minutes on geography, and so on throughout the week. In Key Stage 4, it's a little bit different. You've got English, Maths and Science, but then you've got your 4 options. So there should be 2 days a week where you focus on the core subjects, and for 30 minutes a week on each of your options. The home learning book is available to use, but of course we now allow and encourage students to take their exercise books home, so they could do that work within their exercise book. If you do use your home learning book, please remember to record the date, topic and page number so that you can find it again later. One of the questions I always get from students is, what should I do with my knowledge organisers? And so we do have 5 really key activities that we promote. The first one, very basic: look, cover, write, check. When students get to end of topic tests or their GCSE A-level exams, they need to be able to remember key information. So if they read through the knowledge organiser, look at it, then cover it up, can they write down those key facts they've just gone through, and then check. It is a basic principle, but it is really effective. Keywords and definitions. When you're going through your knowledge organisers, if you find keywords that you don't understand, find the definitions of them. Be independent. What can we do to gain that knowledge and get an understanding of the keywords within each subject? Mind maps are a really key part of knowledge organisers. So taking that information, linking it together in the form of a mind map, it changes how that looks. It helps change it in the memory of students. Learning clocks, really good for students who struggle to manage time. So if you've got an hour or half an hour, a learning clock, spending 10 minutes on each section, it really helps to get through, especially in an evening when you've had a long day. And flashcards, more towards the end of a topic I would say, but flashcards are great for just summarising that key information from the knowledge organisers, maybe the key bits that a student finds really tricky, or some key questions with the answer on the back to help students remember it in the future. On the student grid, we have a whole host of curriculum learning apps, things from Accelerated Reader, Hegarty Learning, the Everlearner, and the Focus e-learning resources for both science and tech. These are really important to subsidise the learning taking place in school. Students should have all of their login details from their subject teacher, and a reminder of the instructions for these applications are on the next slide. Here you can see 7 of the most frequently used curriculum applications that are available on the student grid, and it just summarises what the details of those are, so what they're for, the year groups they're for, and the login details. It's really important that when students receive their login details from their teachers, that they do keep them safe. There is a login details page in the home learning book that's really important. It can be quite frustrating for parents, for students and for teachers when there's constant emails back and forth about what login details are. Students will always be given these at the beginning of the year, and we should promote that independence to enable them to remember them or put them in a place that they can always get to them. And that way, if they're used for home learning, there's no missed deadlines. We of course also have the parent grid for parents and carers at home, with links to how parents and carers can help their children. This gives you access to our curriculum overview, the content of each department's curriculum and the examination boards of each subject, quick access to the knowledge organisers, ePraise and the parents' evening system for booking parents' evening slots at the right time. Over the past 18 months, remote learning has become really important in education. It's a little bit different to home learning, where teachers have set specific short tasks for students to complete to subsidise what they're doing in school. Remote learning obviously is to replace that face-to-face in-school teaching when students need to isolate or be out of school for a period of time. I'm going to just remind you now of all of the key information regarding remote learning for as and when children need to self-isolate or be out of school for a period of time. Sometimes it's really late at night when we get notified of students then not being able to come in for the next day. So we ask for some patience from parents, carers and students for our teachers on that first day of self-isolation for a student. So on that first day, there's unlikely to be any work set, any remote learning set for those students. So please use the knowledge organisers and the associated activities I've been through. Seneca Learning, that's one of the online learning applications that students must create their own login details for and take care of those. They will have a good understanding and a good idea of what topics they're doing and can follow those as part of Seneca Learning. The Oak National Academy has recorded lessons which match many of the topics being studied in school, and the Oak Academy will be a big part of remote learning in general. But there's also Educate for Science and Geography at Key Stage 3 and 4, and always BBC Bite Size at Key Stage 3 and 4 as well. So please bear with us on that first day of self-isolation and make use of all of those resources I've just been through. From the second day onwards, students should have remote learning set for all of their lessons through Microsoft Teams. They need to log in using their school email address and password that's been set up in school, and students have been shown how to access Teams. However, there are help guides that can be found on the student grid. Remote learning will be delivered in the following way. Teachers will write a post in the class team. So students should go to their school timetable, look at what lesson they have, and go to that class as part of Microsoft Teams. There'll be a post identifying what is being covered in the lesson that they're missing and what they need to do to keep up with this. It might be a selection of resources to work through, some activity sheets. It could be to use the Oak National Academy, as I said before. All lesson resources will be added to the files section of Teams, so students will be able to see what's going on. And teachers will advise which resources could be used if there's a specific one. What we're trying to do is get the students that are remote learning from home to be doing as close to what students are doing in the classroom as possible. And there will also continue to be home learning activities set through Teams for the whole teaching group, whether self-isolating or not. And as I've said before, we have a whole host of other online resources for students to use if they want a bit extra to do. What I would say at this point that's really important, that if students are isolating at home, whether they've got COVID or not, it's really important that students don't overdo it. And if they need to take a break whilst recovering from COVID, then please do not expect them to complete that remote learning. They should only do so when they feel up to it. Here's an example of what remote learning will look like. So this was for a class that I taught last year. So it was I put all of the lessons for the week at beginning 2nd of November 2020. You can see there lesson 1, use the PowerPoint, so I'm directing them to the resources, I'm giving the instructions for lesson 1 and lesson 2 of the week. This is what it will look like when a student goes into their class team and looks on the post section. They'll see a post from their teacher from the lesson that day to be able to complete the work. If for any reason they cannot find it, then the first person they should be contacting is their subject teacher, because they will be the people to advise on what to do. Just next to the post section, each class team has a files section, and all lesson resources for that day will be uploaded to there so that students can use those and look at what lesson resources are being used in the lesson they're unfortunately missing. And the final part of this virtual parents forum video is about feedback. I'm going to focus it on something called whole class feedback, which is something we are really pushing here in school for a number of reasons. Whole class feedback is part of a diet of feedback. It's an excellent way to give students timely, detailed, formative feedback whilst also minimising teacher workload to enable teachers to really focus on that lesson by lesson teaching. It replaces writing individual comments in exercise book with feedback given to the whole class, summarising those key strengths of the work, but also the key areas for development and what needs to improve. It allows teachers to engage with the details of the work students produce quickly, and we get short, effective feedback and improvement cycles. This replaces that really detailed marking in books, but of course students with topic tests and assessments, they will receive the individualised feedback for those. So what a teacher does is they'll read through students' work. So they'll have a quick read through a specific piece of work or work over time in exercise books. They'll be taking notes of the strengths, notes of areas for improvement, and providing a one-page form or one-page sheet to all of the students in the next lesson. The students receive that feedback in their next lesson, have a read through what those strengths and areas for improvement are as a group. They'll have a look through their own work and see where exactly it applies to them. And then the really important part of giving feedback is that students are given improvement time afterwards. So that might be anywhere between 10 and 30 minutes to improve the work or have another go at something as part of those areas for improvements identified by the teacher. Here are a couple of examples of whole class feedback forms that have been used recently in the school. This was a Year 12 business one. So you can see there's a summary of the common mistakes, common spelling errors, the successes, the areas for development, some top tips and presentation points, but most importantly at the bottom left there, the further questions. So what does the student need to do now to demonstrate the improvements? We've also got a Year 7 PSHE drama example here. Again, common mistakes and teacher top tips, those successes by the group, some areas for development, and further questions, how to develop that learning further. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this virtual parents forum video. Clearly, teaching, learning, feedback are the key core business of any school. So it's really, really important that all of us, both teachers, all the staff in the school, parents, carers and students, understand the expectations around teaching, around learning, around home learning and around feedback. So hopefully this has been a nice overview for you. Can I just remind all of you out there that if there are any problems, anything that students get stuck on, then there are a whole host of help guides and free software on the student grid. There's also links to it on the parent grid as well. And then if there's any problems, please speak to your tutor or the subject teacher for the lesson that you're having struggles with. Thank you very much for listening. Have a wonderful day or evening at whatever time you're listening to this.